Sir, I am not going to say this again. The voice sliced through the Carolina morning air with the particular edge of someone very young who has just been handed authority and has not yet learned the difference between its weight and its use. You do not have authorization to be on this installation. Step away from the gate. Now, the man standing on the other side of the drop bar was named Raymond Cole. He was 84 years old. He wore a faded canvas jacket the color of old moss, worn jeans with a fray at the left knee, and a simple gray plaid shirt buttoned to the collar. His boots were work boots, not tactical. The leather cracked at the toe boxes and polished not for display, but from habit. Around his neck, hanging outside his collar on a ball chain, were 2 dog tags that caught the September morning light and held it briefly before swinging still. His hands, liver-spotted and crossed with the wrinkles of 8 decades, rested perfectly steady at his sides. He had not reacted to the command. He stood the way a very old and very large tree stands when wind moves through it, not rigid. Rooted, Sergeant First Class Derek Maddox was 29 years old, 6 feet 2, and had completed 4 years with the 101st before transferring to base security at Fort Liberty 3 months ago. He wore his tan beret squared perfectly on his head, his uniform blouse tucked with geometric precision, his boots carrying a mirror shine that reflected small, distorted images of the world around him. He had, in his short tenure at the gate, already developed a reputation among the younger specialists for zero tolerance and maximum presence, and he was deploying those qualities now with considerable energy. Behind him, Specialist Caitlin Reyes sat at the vehicle processing terminal inside the guard shack, watching through scratched plexiglass. A Humvee with a contractor's badge idled 20 yards back, waiting. I said, "Step away." Maddox came around the guard shack, his hand resting on the taser at his hip. Raymond Cole looked at him the way a man looks at approaching weather, not with alarm, simply with attention. "I'm here to visit the museum," Cole said. His voice was low, the rasp of long use, like a wooden floor walked on for decades, deeper and more resonant for it. I called ahead. "Spoke to a Sergeant Tillman." "Sergeant Tillman is not your authorization, sir." Maddox placed weight on the word in a way that turned it into something other than a courtesy. Authorization requires a valid government-issued ID, completed DD Form 1466, submitted no fewer than 72 hours in advance, and a sponsoring unit contact. "Do you have any of those things?" The old man considered this. "No," he said. "I have these." His right hand moved to the dog tags and lifted them slightly. The metal caught the light. Maddox had seen civilians try to use military hardware at gates before, sons carrying a father's tags, strangers who thought the proximity of military metal would soften the process. His expression did not shift. "Sir, I need you to proceed to your vehicle. Contact the visitor processing office during posted hours and begin the authorization process through proper channels." "I don't have a vehicle," Raymond Cole said. Maddox looked past the old man. Beyond the barrier was the 2-lane road, a thin line of pines, and the distant sound of highway traffic. No vehicle. The old man had walked to the gate. Maddox blinked once and pushed forward. "Then you will wait on that bench while I contact my duty officer." He pointed to a concrete bench 30 feet right of the guard shack. "I will wait," Raymond Cole said. And then he did not move. Maddox called it in. His duty officer, Lieutenant Fennick, was 24 years old and had approximately the same difficulty tolerating ambiguity as his sergeant. His direction was immediate. Unauthorized entry. Trespass protocol. Enforce if necessary. Maddox clicked off and turned back. Behind him, Reyes had come out of the shack. She stood near the barrier watching. She was 22 and had been at this gate for 7 months, and she had not in that time seen an 84-year-old man on foot request entry to a military installation carrying nothing but dog tags and a quiet that felt somehow more substantial than his frame suggested it should be. "Sir," Maddox said, his voice now in its enforcement register, flat, deliberate, stripped of warmth. "I have orders to ask you to vacate this area. If you do not comply, I am authorized to detain you for unauthorized access. Do you understand?" "I understand," Raymond Cole said. His eyes, when he looked at Maddox directly, were pale, a faded blue that was almost gray, the color of a winter sky in late afternoon. They possessed a depth that absorbed the hostility aimed at them without reflecting it back, like looking down a very deep and very cold well that was utterly still at the surface. Maddox found the look briefly uncomfortable and responded by becoming louder. "Then vacate the area. Right now." "I believe," Raymond Cole said, in that same low, unhurried rasp, "that if you run those tags through your system, you'll find what you're looking for." Maddox was already moving. One hand closed on the old man's forearm, the other going to the taser at his hip, a sharp command, "Do not resist, sir," hands. And then the brief confusion of the next several seconds, because Raymond Cole did not resist and did not struggle. He simply became very still, and in Maddox's effort to establish control, his hand closed around the dog tag chain and it snapped free. And Maddox was standing there holding 2 pieces of stamped metal in his palm. The moment the chain left Raymond Cole's neck, something changed in the old man's face. Not pain, not anger. A distant look, the way a man looks when something he has carried for 60 years suddenly is not there anymore. His eyes went somewhere else entirely. It was 1968, and the air was not Carolina September air. It was Vietnam air, thick, wet, alive with vegetation decay and copper and cordite, and the light filtered down through triple canopy jungle in thin shafts that illuminated nothing useful. He was 21 years old. Corporal Raymond Cole, United States Army. His knees were in 6 inches of mud, and his spotter, a kid from Savannah named Brooksy, who was 19 and read John Steinbeck by flashlight between missions, lay in the vegetation 6 inches to his right, absolutely still. They had been in this position for 11 hours. Cole's arms had stopped trembling from fatigue approximately 4 hours ago, and had found a plateau of steadiness he could not have explained to anyone who had not lain in the dirt of a jungle for 11 hours with a rifle and everything on the line. The target was 640 yards across a clearing and uphill, and there were 8 men in a ravine below who would not see morning if he could not make a shot the ballistic tables called improbable and his instincts called possible. The wind was not a single wind. It was 4 separate winds moving at 4 separate angles across that clearing, and reading them, letting them speak through the trembling of distant leaves and the behavior of far-off grass, was the only thing that would tell him when the corridor opened. Brooksy pressed something cold into his left palm without a word. Cole did not look at it. He read the wind. He held. A leaf on the far tree moved in a direction that told him something precise and true, and he breathed out, and the rifle spoke once, and across the clearing something changed, and 8 men in a ravine would live to see morning. He looked at what Brooksy had placed in his palm, his own dog tags. Brooksy had lifted them from his neck while he was reading the wind. Quiet as a thought. "In case," Brooksy whispered. Not afraid. Practical, just making sure that if something went wrong, Raymond Cole would still be identified, still be brought home. Brooksy did not come home. He was killed on the extraction 2 days later on a road that did not appear on any official map. Cole carried those tags every day for 56 years. Not from superstition, not from sentiment anyone could identify from the outside. He carried them because Brooksy had held them at the moment Raymond Cole had done the impossible, and that meant they held something that could not be named or weighed or replaced. They were not tags. They were the weight of a 19-year-old kid who read Steinbeck by flashlight and gave everything he had on a road that never made it into any account that anyone would ever read. The jungle smell left. The mud left his knees. He was standing in Carolina in September, and the dog tags were not around his neck anymore. Back at the shack, Specialist Caitlin Reyes had watched all of it. She had watched the old man walk to the gate on foot. She had watched him stand without reacting while Maddox performed his authority at full volume. She had watched the chain snap. She had watched something cross the old man's face. Not confusion, not pain. Something she could not name but recognized in a way she could not explain. The way you recognize music you've never heard before but understand immediately is important. She went back inside. Maddox had set the tags on the barrier counter. She looked at what was stamped on them. The name, the blood type, the partial social security. And below the name, a unit designation and a classification code she had never seen in 7 months of gate processing. She did not know what it meant. She knew it meant something. She picked up the internal line, called the base operator, and gave the code. A pause. A transfer. 2 rings. A master sergeant picked up with a clipped professional greeting. Reyes said she was processing a situation at Gate 3, and a set of dog tags at the gate showed this designation code. She gave the name stamped on them. The silence that followed was not a processing pause. It was 4 full seconds that had texture to it, weight and shape. When the master sergeant's voice returned, it had changed completely. The professional briskness was gone. What replaced it was something between urgency and something that, if Reyes had been pressed to name it, she would have called reverence. "Say that name again," the master sergeant said. Reyes said it again. "Do not let anyone touch him. Do not process him. Do not detain him. I need his exact location at that gate, and I need you to not move him. Do you understand me?" Reyes said yes. The line was quiet for a moment, filled with muffled, urgent voices she could not make out, and then it went dead. In the duty office 2 miles from the gate, Master Sergeant Leon Vickers was already on his feet, his chair rolling back into the credenza behind him. He picked up his command line. He dialed a number he had not dialed since the change of command ceremony 14 months ago. 1 ring. A colonel answered. Vickers said the name. 1 second of silence. Then, "Where?" "Gate 3, ma'am. Right now." The colonel did not wait for the rest of the sentence. In the brigade commander's conference room, Colonel Patricia Harshaw was standing over a terrain model with 3 of her staff officers when the door opened without a knock, and her executive officer appeared in the doorframe. His face was a color she had not seen in 8 years of serving beside him. He walked directly to her and said something in a voice too low for the staff officers to hear. Harshaw looked at him for 1 second. "Then, to the room, we're done here." She was through the door before they finished exchanging glances. At the gate, Maddox had made the decision to deploy the taser. Raymond Cole went down on the gravel at the side of the entry lane without a sound, no cry, no curse, nothing that corresponded to the indignity of what had just happened. Just the quiet folding of a very old man who had absorbed considerably worse and would not give this moment the gift of his reaction. Reyes was outside again before the dust settled. She knelt beside him. "Sir, are you hurt?" "I am fine," Raymond Cole said from the gravel, his voice unchanged. "I have been down in worse mud than this." Maddox was writing in his documentation pad when the sound began. Low first, A vibration felt through the sternum before the ears identified it. Then it resolved into engines. Then multiple engines moving fast. Then the first vehicle came around the curve of the installation road, and then the second, and then the third. 3 black command vehicles, each bearing flag mounts and 2-digit plates, stopped in a precise semicircle 40 feet from the gate. The doors were open before the vehicles had fully stopped, and figures in Army service uniforms moved with the disciplined economy of people who have been very well trained and are operating at urgency. The last figure out of the center vehicle was Colonel Patricia Harshaw. She walked through the cluster of personnel and staff without apparent awareness of their existence, her eyes fixed on the man in the gravel at the side of the entry lane. She saw Maddox. She saw the taser. She saw the documentation pad. She stopped and gave him a look that required no elaboration, though elaboration would follow. She knelt on the gravel beside Raymond Cole, which was not something anyone present had expected to see a brigade commander do. She offered her hand. "Mr. Cole," she said, her voice stripped of everything institutional. "I am Colonel Patricia Harshaw. I am deeply sorry." The pale winter sky eyes looked at her for a moment. "Quiet, undemanding, Colonel," Cole said. "I appreciate that. I believe I'd like to stand up." She helped him to his feet. He was not unsteady. He accepted the help without pride interfering. When he was upright, Colonel Harshaw stepped back and came to full attention. And then she rendered the crispest, most breathtakingly precise salute that anyone within sight of that gate had ever seen, directed at an 84-year-old man in a faded canvas jacket and cracked work boots. She held it. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. 4. Long enough for everyone present to understand that what was happening was not routine, not perfunctory, not procedural. She held it until Raymond Cole returned it with his right hand, and then she dropped hers and did not speak immediately. The silence had a quality. Maddox stood at the edge of the entry lane, documentation pad in his hands, and understood from the way every uniformed person around him was behaving that he was in the presence of something he did not yet have the framework to comprehend. Harshaw turned to face the assembled group. She had the dog tags in her left hand. They had been passed to her quietly by one of her staff. She held them now with both hands. "Let me tell you who is standing in front of you," she said. Her voice addressed everyone present, the specialists, Maddox, Reyes, the contractor's driver, the idling vehicles. Raymond Jesse Cole, Master Sergeant, United States Army, retired. 24 years of service, 1965 through 1989. 2 tours in Vietnam and 3 classified operations whose designation I am not at liberty to name at an unsecured gate, but whose after-action reports are still referenced in Special Operations Training Doctrine today. She paused. He holds the Bronze Star with Valor, the Silver Star, 2 Purple Hearts, and the Distinguished Service Cross. She looked at the tags. The confirmation code on these dog tags is the reason my gate terminal operator's call reached my command line within 45 seconds of the name being spoken. It is a code assigned to fewer than 60 individuals in the history of the United States Army, designating service that cannot be quantified in rank or ribbon. When this man presents at any installation in this country, the senior officer present is notified immediately. That code exists because of what Master Sergeant Cole did in circumstances between 1968 and 1972 that are still classified. Circumstances that protected the people who taught the people who trained the people standing at this gate today. She let that land. Then, in 1971, Master Sergeant Cole set a sniper qualification record that stood for 22 years. The shot itself, 640 yards uphill through 4 simultaneous wind corridors, in monsoon conditions with 8 American lives dependent on its accuracy, is still referenced in Army Sniper School instruction as a case study in environmental reading. The rifle used in that shot is on display inside the installation museum that Master Sergeant Cole called ahead to visit. She held up the tags. The enemy had a name for him. They called him the Winter Sky, because a winter sky is pale and still and gives no warning before the storm comes. She looked directly at Maddox. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet. The display in the museum also includes a photograph of Private First Class Aaron Brooks, known to his unit as Brooksy, who was killed on the extraction following that shot. Brooksy was 19 years old. He held these dog tags at the moment the shot was made. Master Sergeant Cole has carried them since. She placed the tags gently in Raymond Cole's palm and closed his fingers around them. The installation is yours, Master Sergeant. We will take you wherever you want to go. The formal inquiry recommended reassignment and mandatory remediation for Sergeant First Class Maddox. Not career ending. The Army does not discard correctable soldiers. What the Army does with correctable failures is correct them. And Maddox cooperated with that process with the quiet, unglamorous discipline of a man who has understood something at a level that goes below rank and uniform. That same afternoon, before the command vehicles departed, Raymond Cole walked to where Maddox stood near the guard shack. Maddox did not move toward him. Cole came to him, slowly and without drama, and placed a hand on the sergeant's shoulder, the same shoulder that had been used to physically control him an hour before. The inversion was not lost on the witnesses still present. Maddox, 6'2" and 70 pounds heavier than the old man, went entirely still. "You've got discipline," Cole said. He was not looking at Maddox the way a man looks at someone he is correcting. He was looking at him the way a man looks at something he recognizes from a long time ago. "And you've got command presence. Both of those are real. Both of those matter." He paused. "But the uniform isn't the wisdom. It's just the outside of the thing. The wisdom is what the years inside it teach you, if you let them." He squeezed the shoulder once, lightly. "You've got years ahead. Don't let today just be something that happened to you. Let it be something that starts something in you." Maddox said nothing. He nodded once. It was the right response, and Cole seemed to understand it as such because he removed his hand and did not prolong the moment. 3 months later, in the parking lot of a hardware store in Fayetteville, Sergeant First Class Derek Maddox saw an old man in a faded canvas jacket loading a single bag of mulch into the bed of a beat-up pickup truck that had no business still running. The posture was familiar. So were the dog tags on the ball chain outside the collar. Maddox drove past the parking space and then did not. He put the car in reverse and got out. Cole saw him coming and waited. Maddox walked up and took a breath. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I've owed you one since September. I am sorry, Master Sergeant. What I did was wrong." Raymond Cole looked at him for a moment. The pale winter sky eyes were the same as they had been at the gate, not warm, not cold, not searching, simply present. "You were young," Cole said. "You still are. There's time." He glanced at the truck. "You know anything about mulch?" Maddox blinked. "A little, sir, good." Cole reached past him and handed him the second bag, still sitting on the ground. They stood together in the parking lot for a few minutes, in the kind of quiet that does not need to be filled with words. Two men at very different points on the same long road, and the older one not making anything of the distance between them. Then Cole tossed his keys and got in. The truck started with a sound like a man clearing his throat after a long silence, and it moved out of the lot and was gone. Maddox stood beside his car and looked at the sky for a moment before he got in. There are men and women who have given everything this country has ever asked of them, who have lain in the mud of impossible circumstances and done the impossible thing and then walked quietly home and carried the weight of it for 60 years without requiring the world to know. They are in the hardware stores and the diners and the parking lots, carrying coffee and bags of mulch and the memory of 19-year-old kids who read Steinbeck by flashlight and did not come home. They do not announce themselves. They do not need to. They simply carry what they carry, in worn jackets and cracked work boots, steady as a winter sky. If Raymond Cole's story of quiet dignity and 60 years of grace moved you today, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Veterans Valor for more stories of America's unassuming heroes, the ones who walked into fire so the rest of us could walk in peace.